Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to solve by factoring. So what I mean by this is we're going to combine what we've learned with factoring trinomials and use this with factoring equations, in this case, that equals 0. So we still do the same process. In this case, you look at your 10, you do 1 and 10, 2 and 5. What two numbers give us a plus 7 right here? That would be the 2 and 5. So now I know that it's going to be x plus 2, x plus 5 equals 0. So now what we need to do is we need to split these parentheses and solve it. So we've got x plus 2 equals 0, x plus 5 equals 0. To solve for x on both, we're going to subtract the 2 on the left, and we're going to subtract 5 from the right. So x equals -5, x equals -2. So what this actually tells us is if we were going to graph this trinomial, or in other words, quadratic, this would be -2, 0, -5, 0, where the line would meet on the x-axis. But what we're interested in is this right here, x -2, x is -5. Now, second example. X squared minus x minus 12 equals 0. One and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. So since it's a minus 12, that means I'm going to subtract to get my middle term, which is -x or -1. So which two numbers can you subtract to give you a -1? Right here, 3 and 4. This means x minus 4, x plus 3 equals 0. What I'm going to do is I'm going to separate them. X minus 4 equals 0. X plus 3 equals 0. Add my 4. X equals 4. Subtract 3. X equals -3. Now notice something with my answers. You want to look at the parentheses right here. If you put that 4 minus 4, it's 0, and -3 plus 3 is 0. We can do x squared plus 8x plus 16. Notice I'm a 16. We can do 1 and 16, 2 and 8, 4 and 4. Since my 16 is positive, my 8's positive, add them up. This is a perfect square. So that means what in my parentheses can make that 0? You can look at it that way. X equals -4. It's on both of them, but you only need it one time. Number 4, x squared minus 81 equals 0. Notice we have no middle term. We got a perfect square, which this would be 9 and 9. So that means my answer is going to be x minus 9, x plus 9 equals 0. So x is, the first one, that would be a 9. Second one would be a negative 9 to give you 0, because 9 minus 9 is 0. Negative 9 plus 9 is 0. This can also be written as plus or minus 9 as well. You may see this as well, plus or minus 9. Okay, number 5. Now this is the one that's understanding a few points here. One is we can factor the x out. And second, look at your 25 and your 9. They're perfect squares. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring out my x. And that leaves me 25x squared minus 9 equals 0. Twenty-five is a perfect square. You got 2 x's. My 9's a perfect square. So this is going to be x, 5x. Since there's no middle term right here, one's going to be plus 3, and the other one's going to be minus 3. Now, in this case, I'm going to show us how to solve this, because this is a little different than the other ones. So my first one, I've got this x. I'm going to say x equals 0. Then I'm going to say 5x plus 3 equals 0. Then I'm going to say 5x minus 3 equals 0. So I'm taking my parentheses and equals 0, and always look at whatever's outside the parentheses, which in this case is an x. We set that equal to 0. Now I'm going to solve minus 3 on both sides. 5x equals negative 3. Divide by 5. X equals negative 3/5. Right here, this is x equals 0. And then right here, we're going to add 3 to both sides. You get 5x equals 3. Divide by 5. And notice that it's the same as my middle parentheses, except the sign is different. It's positive. These are my 3 answers, so you can write them. If you want to write them in numerical order, you can. Okay, 2 more examples. What about if you have something like this? Well, you would look at the middle and you're like, well, is the answer 4? Well, no. What you want to do is you want to distribute the 4 first. 4x. 4 times negative 4 is negative 16 equals 7. Then what we're going to do is we need to solve for x. So we're going to add 16 to both sides. (4x) equals 23. Last one, divide by 4. And since 4 cannot go into 23, or 23 over 4 cannot reduce, my answer is going to be x equals 23 over 4. And finally, another way that it could look a little different to us is if we have a problem, maybe (7x plus 5). And then I'm going to have 2x squared minus 17x minus 9. Now, we cannot do anything with the first set of parentheses. But the second set, we can do what I did in my previous one. 2 times negative 9 is negative 18. 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. So since this is a negative 9 and that's a negative 17, that means I'm going to have to subtract. Which 2 subtract that can give me a negative 17? It's 1 and 18. So I'm going to say x plus 1, x minus 18. Then I'm going to look at the leading coefficient, which is 2. I'm going to divide each by 2. So I've got this 7x plus 5. This 2 goes out in front because that leaves us 1/2. It doesn't go in evenly, so it'd be 2x plus 1. So this right here, I'm showing us in blue. This is how you would correctly factor this. But it's asking you for zeros, okay? So then the blue is my correct factor. Now, here's what I'm going to show us when you have this completely factored. I want to show us a different type of way. Instead of setting everyone equal to 0 and solve, watch this. Okay, the 7 can go right down below the 5, and we take the opposite sign. So my answer is going to be negative 5/7. This one right here goes below it. So that'd be a positive 1/2. So we take the opposite, negative 1/2. And since that's a positive 9, or I'm sorry, negative 9, we're going to make that into a positive 9. That's another way we can do this. You take the opposite sign in number when we have it factored and we set it equal to 0. I hope this helps. Thank you for listening.